Thank you, Caherloch. I have to say, I find it absolutely infuriating listening to people in the one breath talk about the value of life, the value of migrants, how they should be treated, you know, the value of their, you know, when they get here and their work and their contributions, and then on the other hand, stand with an EU that does use EU money through the Trust Fund for Africa to intercept boats at sea. So we can make the stretch and say, oh, but it's not our money paying for detention centres. You're talking about breaking the cycle of smugglers, but you're actually creating the need for detention centres. So it's like, by intercepting people at sea, by sending people back to detention centres, we are actually creating the need for detention centres which are completely abusing people's human rights. So on the one hand, we're saying we hold this value as a people and our history and coffin ships and all of this, and it's all starting to mean absolutely nothing, right? Because the values we hold can't only exist in the very thing of just holding them. You have to actually act on them. And what's being put in this motion actually removes the call to the return of search and rescue. Search and rescue. Tell me how breaking the business model of smugglers has anything got to do with search and rescue. We talk about vulnerable migrants and the protection of vulnerable migrants, but it's like they're not vulnerable unless they actually end up on our doorstep. We don't want to recognise their vulnerability in the sea. We don't want to recognise their vulnerability in the detention centres that we're forcing them to stay in when we intercept their boats, when we push them back. And EU money does support that. And government MEPs have voted for that. So there's no good sitting at home telling ourselves we're all really great people and we're not very racist and we're all great and we all really care about people and sure won't we, you know, give them access to whatever when they get here. But we're going to completely ignore that we're contributing to people dying at sea. Because if it happens far enough away, well, am I really responsible? And we do all these mental acrobats in our own heads that try to tell us that we're not responsible for that. Okay, so whether we stand here and we vote against motions or put in counter motions that absolutely destroy the principles of human rights and dignity, right? Or we go into the fucking sea ourselves, sorry, apologies, I removed the F word, go into the sea and push them with our own hands, okay? We are responsible. It doesn't matter how far back in the system that we go, we are responsible for that. And today we have a government not supporting a motion that calls for search and rescue. How does that make sense? Yeah. Do you think a smuggler cares how many times we send people back to the detention centre? I'm sure they're rubbing their hands saying, great, another trip to be paid for, another trip to be paid for, another trip, oh, you're back again? You were intercepted again? Okay, this is how much it's going to cost to go again, and this is how much it's going to cost to go again, and this is how much it's going to cost again. Hey, tell me what business model is being interrupted here. There's absolutely no business model being interrupted. Because you're either going to die at sea, right? Do you think the smuggler is sitting at home going, oh, I'm not going to smuggle tomorrow? That person died at sea. Like, none of that makes sense. And the contribution here today does not address what Senator Gavin said about removing search and rescue from this and intercepting people at sea. Because that's what we're standing over today. So we can stand in this chamber and give these big fancy speeches about how much we care, but we don't. We do not care. And if you come in and vote for this counter motion, you do not care. Because it actually does matter what we say and whether we act on what we say. It does matter that Ireland sends a strong message to the EU that it does not support people dying. We are saying people have a right to international protection. When we're here and we're trying to stop people pushing back against migrants, we're saying these people have a right to be here. They have a right to international protection. But then at an EU level, what we're supporting is, but we're going to make sure you don't get here so that you can't even exercise that right. So we're actually stopping people actually being able to get the right to claim asylum in a country by intercepting them at sea. And then we have legislation that's coming through on hate speech. Tell me how this is not incitement to hatred. Tell me how not saving people at sea. Tell me how choosing to intercept a boat and send them back into dangerous waters is not incitement to hatred. because it's a targeted act against vulnerable people who are not of the same race and social class of the many people that are making the decisions, and it is incitement. And we are choosing for them to die. And I literally urge every single person who comes in here and speaks up for migrants to stay in their offices right now and do not come up and vote for this counter motion.
Well said.
Thank you, Senator Ruane.